Today's starter for our lesson is, you remember from history classes past, even back to 5th grade, that the reason we study history, and UTT is a social studies / history / Bible, it's kind of like covers a lot of area, but we study history because Nate remembers those who do not remember the past are condemned or destined or doomed to repeat it. We usually talk about it in a negative sense. Well, here's a guy that some of you never heard of, or most of you never heard of. I was kind of hoping that one or two in here may have heard of him, because you're so intellectual as you get into your adult years. Some of you are 18. How many is 18? 1, 2, 3. There's only 3 18-year-olds? Wow. Okay. Nobody's 16, right? Well, that's right. You're a junior. 16. Yeah, I was 16 in your shoes. For another 5 weeks, I would have been 16 or 17.
Why were you a senior?
Because back then, you took it, like if you took the test and you were quote unquote ready, or maybe your mom just wanted you out of the house, I don't know. But I took the test for kindergarten for whatever reason. I don't know. I was there. I mean, I was there. I wasn't part of the decision. I wasn't part of the decision, but I guess I passed, and they sent me to kindergarten at 4.
What?
And then about 35 years ago, they decided, you know what, we can't have that. So they made it more stringent. You had to be at least a September birthday, or no,
Oh, yeah.
at least had to be 5 by September something.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. So then it put me, I had a double whammy, because I was always smaller. I grew to this whopping 5'9". I grew 2 inches after high school. I know, I'm so tall. Imagine, I was even smaller. And I was really small entering high school. So here I was trying to be an athlete, and I was not quite 5 foot tall when I started my freshman year.
That's okay.
And 13.
You don't have to be tall. For basketball,
And I did play basketball for years. Anyway, similar to that, Thomas Sowell, a great intellect, a historian and economist, says one of the most important reasons for studying history is that, similar to what our quote says, every stupid... Are you allowed to say stupid?
No. That is against...
Listen, if there's anybody working here, if your feelings are hurt, and you need some air...
Nobody said this in first grade.
Every stupid idea that is in vogue today has been tried before. Vogue means, what's vogue mean? If something's vogue, it means it's in, give me a word to put in there. If something's vogue, that means it's in, what? Oh, you've heard this before.
Yeah.
It's in fashion, or it's in style, right? So all these things, these so-called like ideas, like you're living in right now, where they're pushing socialism, it's been tried before. In fact, it's been tried many times. In fact, it seems like every generation has to go through their dose of finding out how disastrous it has been throughout history, time and again. So that's our starter for the day. Oh, I did, since I had that up there, I thought I'd show you this one too. I came across this one in, somebody sent me something, I don't know. But Thomas Sowell also said this: it is usually futile, or futile, people pronounce it different ways, right, Sam? It is usually futile.
What?
Some people got that. Oh. It is usually futile to try to talk facts and analysis to people who are enjoying this sense of moral superiority in their ignorance. In other words, what he's trying to say is, for some people, it doesn't matter how much actual facts, truth, data you have. They are so smug in their and arrogant in their position they've taken that's not really based on analysis or facts, but it's more based on the fact that they are so, what do we call it today? Virtue signaling. Have you heard that phrase before? Virtue signaling. You've never heard that phrase? That's like a phrase being used a lot on social media. You virtue signal when you do things like, hey, I wear a mask to protect others.
And then they wear below their nose.
And if you don't wear a mask
They wear it like below their nose.
to protect others, you're just not worthy. You're awful. you're an awful person because, and then you try to tell them, studies show, and study after study, and even the studies done by the CDC show that, so you give them all the stats and they don't care. I wear the mask to protect others, and I'm better than you. So it doesn't matter what you tell them. They don't care. Because they're virtuous, and you're not. Especially if you're a Christian. Anyway. All right, so beyond that, here's my opening questions for the day. It's kind of been spoiled already by Brenna, but I was going to ask this question, see how many hands I got. Ready? Raise your hand if you know the answer to this question. Who is Andy Roddick? Andy Roddick. No one's raising their hand? Not even Brenna? Because you brought it up.
I did.
Yes. You brought it up to show everybody that
Oh,
you...
was it the tennis champion dude? Well, chess
Oh,
champion someone.
another one? Yeah.
I thought it would at least stuck in memory that you read just 2 pages. Steve, you only had to read 2.5 pages.
I know. But it was
And you
like
couldn't remember the tennis player, the champion was Andy Roddick?
That was a while ago.
Yeah, I
It
remember.
was Tuesday.
We were supposed to talk about this yesterday.
Yeah,
Oh.
no one
He
remembers
said
that.
that.
Oh,
He
my
came prepared.
goodness. Oh,
And
my.
then we lost it.
We all read it at first.
I was so
Well, if you couldn't even answer who Andy Roddick is, okay, so now that you know okay, I'll give you an out. You read it, but you didn't pay particular attention to the guy's name.
Yeah, because I was more.
How were they using, what context were they using Andy Roddick's name? Why was Andy Roddick and why was tennis being used at the beginning of the Understanding the Times book? Raise your hand. Hey, this is good. You're giving answers, but you gotta raise your hand. Yes?
Because we have to know, like, the signals that people are giving off to be able to, like,
All right. She used the word signals. The book uses the word, starts with P, patterns. The idea was, if someone is serving the ball at you 150 miles an hour, you can use this analogy in baseball too. 150 miles an hour. There are very few people in the world, first of all, no matter what advantage you give them, that would have the physical skill to be able to return it, right? You have to really be polished and skilled and work at that craft to be able to return it, even if you knew exactly where it was going. But one of the ways that athletes like Andy Roddick or the people that are playing against someone that serves like that is they follow, they learn, and they develop skill to know what is going to happen, like almost like they know what's going to happen before it's going to happen. Does that make sense? Because they follow the patterns, they see where he tosses the ball, if he's going to, what side of the court he's going to serve it on. Because if you're standing over here on the left and he's putting the ball over on the right and you're not moving before that ball gets off his racket, you're not touching it. So you have to, like in baseball, when you get to a certain level, beyond high school and even beyond college, and every pitcher is throwing the ball like 95 miles an hour plus, if you're not studying patterns, then you're not going to be, no matter how skilled you are, how incredible your swing is, with all the mechanics, you're not touching the ball because you won't be ready for it. You're not recognizing patterns. Even in basketball. Basketball is a game that really it's constant. Like, you have to make decisions within hundredths of a second all the time, right? I'm about to pass this ball. Do I actually pass it, or you ever done that? Like, as soon as you pass it, you're like, can I have that back? Right? Because everything's happening so fast. So you have to recognize patterns. And I shouldn't do this, but everybody saw it, and that just came to my head. So when what's his name, Cusick, was coming down court at half court, and one of our players, so JP, when he stole the ball, I remember when I interviewed him after the game, he said he noticed what he would do, like he would go around his back, whatever. So then he had to anticipate, he knew that pattern, and he was able to steal the ball and lay it in the buzzer. You don't remember that game? Remember that play? That was because, not just because of skill, at that time, he said he recognized the pattern. Does that make sense? So you're playing against a guy, you're playing defense in basketball, and why do you watch film? I know some of you just watch yourself, but you should be watching it to recognize patterns of your opponents. But what do patterns have to do with, is it just about sports? Even Mr. Franken thinks there's more to life than sports. What was the point? To point out the patterns of a tennis player, or you can apply it to other sports, or a chess player, or life? What's the point? Yeah. Well, you say there's divine order, which is true. The book said that you have to recognize that the world lives according to rules, right? There's certain rules or divine order or laws, scientific laws like gravity or other just the way things are. And if you don't recognize that, it's going to be very hard for you to be successful. And the book starts off with just you being successful. How are you going to navigate your way through a world and be successful if you don't recognize how the world operates and the rules that govern how we communicate and organize? How are you going to be successful? And we haven't even started talking about your Christian worldview yet, but here's something I often point out. You should want to be successful, not just because you want to be successful, but because with your success, it affords you more influence. And with your influence, it gives you more esteem, status, or power in a community. And with that power and influence, then you'd be able to reach more people with your ultimate goal, and that is to be the minister, the witness, the light that you have in you from Christ, right? So the keys to success. One was recognizing the world is made of rules. And the second one was anybody remember? Yeah, it wasn't bold, you're right. It's just simply by recognizing those and by not ignoring them. If you follow those rules, then you see those patterns and you can be successful. And the rest of the book's going to explain, okay, now that we've set that up, it might not make sense now, but how does that apply to you understanding the times and being able to, A, live in the world even though you're not of the world, but living in the world, you want to be God's ambassador and be successful. Yeah.
Is understanding the times middle schools, a class middle schools have, or is it just like,
It's a Christian philosophical book, of course.
oh yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know.
You know, that's interesting. I would want to find out if there would be any public schools that would take that on. I doubt it. I don't know. There's public schools, unfortunately, around the country that are like dropping U.S. history altogether. Yeah. That's the time we're in. We don't want to, I mean, there's a lot of people that, when I say U.S. history or anything U.S., like, there's people that are offended and triggered by the flag. Incredible. All right, where were we? What were we about to watch something? Or no, we watched, what was it?
The
Is that guy
guy.
British? Was he British Canadian? That's
I
what
don't
I
know.
gathered. Seemed like he was from Canada, but he had British accent. Talking about worldview. Now we go to another person. Some of you might recognize this guy. He's coming.
View.
Oh, good.
Worldview, as the word suggests, is how we look at the
Anybody know that
world
guy?
around us. How do we understand life as it hits us in the face?
Nobody is without a worldview. The only question is it a good one or a bad one?
A worldview is a set of basic assumptions that help you make sense about reality, or is a set of basic assumptions about reality. A worldview is like a lens through which you see things, and you're not really aware of the lens, you're only aware of the things you see. So it becomes the glasses, the spectacles, the filter through which they're actually seeing life. And the whole universe and the world and human life is understood through that lens.
On the basis of that worldview, you make your momentary judgment. events in life. So everyone has a worldview, and I think it is the grid that frames the nature of reality for you and the judgments that you make for yourself and others in life.
There's a proverb that says, as a man thinketh, so shall he act, or so is he, depending on the translation. And our thinking really does govern the way we act, the choices we make.
There are ideas that have consequences. And our culture is shaped, first of all, by distorted ideas that yield distorted lives.
All the non-Christian worldviews, whether they're atheistic or religious, are alternatives that are basically a refusal to bow to the truth as God sees it.
If you don't have a Christian worldview, if you don't understand the doctrine whereby God is sovereignly involved in every aspect of your life, then you have no basis for stability, no basis for morality, no basis for hope, and as the Apostle Paul said, we become pitiable creatures.
And when we do not understand or know the true claims of God, we take the truth claims of the world as if they're true. And when we live according to the lies and the illusions of the world, then we suffer deeply.
God wants us to see the world the way He told us it is. Everything begins with an infinite personal God, and the whole universe and the world and human life is understood through that lens.
Whether we're talking about sociology, we're talking about anthropology, we're talking about science or history, law, politics, economics, it does not matter. You can trust that God has given to us the framework of truth from which we can stand upon and live.
That's the secret of freedom. That's the secret of humanness. That's the secret of fulfillment.
It is the truth of who God is, and it is the trust that He really is who He says He is, and that His truth claims are really real. You can trust them with your very life and your very soul. I am convinced that that is exactly what truly transforms people, and you will find it to be one of the most glorious moments in your life.
So we're still in the introductory phase, and I can tell you from personal experience that I've been trying to live the good Christian life for almost 40 years, and I've been set on and teaching and trying to learn to have a biblical worldview for about 20. And I still, when I reflect, I'm like, I'm still not there. Does that make sense? Like, the world we live in is bombarding us in our senses so much that you really, okay, some of you, by the time you get to be a senior, you're about had it with worldview up to here. You would never admit it, maybe outside of the classroom, outside of a teacher. I know, because I've talked to students. Okay, we get it. Why do we talk so much about it? Again, I said because I've been not only trying to live it and be it myself, but even teaching it and learning more about it, even outside of the classroom at my house, sitting there instead of playing video games, watching other people talk about it, and it's still very hard. And what happens is, if I don't make a conscientious, definitive effort to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to see the world, give me your eyes. You know that song? You know that song either? Anyway, if I don't make a conscious effort to see the world as God sees it, I'm not going to, because our flesh is always going to take over, right? So we keep talking about it, we keep, quote, harping on it, because if you don't, you're not. And I'm not, because that's how we're made. We're sinful, fallen, still in the flesh, and if we don't make an effort to allow the Spirit to guide us and overcome the flesh, or allow the biblical point of view to saturate us, we're not going to do it. We're not. Because we're saturated with the world, whether you want to be or not. Some of you, you don't partake in movies or the music of the day or social media, and you kind of live and you don't participate in that. But still, the temptation, even without all the temptations that we face, there's still that root base temptation to make life all about yourself. Right? And the other thing about it is, who at 17 or 18 wants to talk about this serious stuff? Right? Can't we just do fun stuff? Can't we just enjoy life? Yeah, because I don't want to make it that. I don't want it to be what they used to say in the 60s, heavy, man. I don't want to make it like some, right? I don't want to make it like that. Because I enjoy life. Like I said, you have to really make an effort to put that muffler on yourself, I guess. That's another word for it. Something to rein you in so that you stay on the right path. Does that all make sense? So hopefully this is not something that you've grown to be loathsome about because it's talked about so much or you're being preached at. And that's why I want you to talk and we can have it back and forth and not be so heavy. But still, for me, even outside of class, even during the summer or whatever, I just click on some pastor or somebody or someone else I know that shares my views and it's just to like reinforce. I know you're not going to be all nerds like me and want to really get into it, but to make you aware that you have a worldview. And I think in your heart, if you were just you and me, or better yet, just you and God, you would say, I want to have a biblical worldview. Lord, I want to see the world the way you see it. But then we don't. Let's face it, we don't. We would fall short unless we're really trying. And life can still be grand and fun. We do all kinds of fun things. Drinking, whatever.
What?
I don't know. I don't know. It's been kind of a topic of conversation.
What do you think we do for fun? I said, what do you think we do for fun?
Not streaking, I hope. What?
I wish we didn't streak.
Wait, I just realized we're recording.
Yeah.
We're recording, Brenna. We're recording the class. All right. So make sure you read pages 3 through 8. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? I thought only a select few knew what I was talking
About what?
about. Nothing. All right. We'll be watching bits and pieces of this. Has anybody ever heard of something called the Truth Project? Raise your hand. The Truth Project. Somebody? Anybody?
Nope.
I think it's the ones that are sophomores now. One of their churches, so then their friend group has been watching this.
Okay.
Remember, I think it was yesterday I said that the reason Christ came in the flesh to earth was to present people with the truth. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Luke, could you hit the lights? Thanks, John. Shh, ladies. What is truth? Or as Pilate probably said it, what is truth? Amelia, do you really believe that what you believe is really real? Good.
I think probably one of the main issues that people wrestle with is the reality of God. And when we do not understand this cosmic battle that has been raging from the very beginning between God's truth and the lies of the world of flesh and the devil, we take the truth claims of the world as if they're true. And when we live according to the lies and the illusions of the world, and we suffer deeply.
The single most important question any human being can ask is the question, what is truth? So when Pilate looked at Jesus, and Pilate says, what is truth? And walks away. Pilate walked away from the greatest authority on the greatest question and committed the greatest crime at that time.
What a question, what is truth? That's a really hard question, what is truth?
What is truth? We understand it in a way that makes sense for us.
Truth is very hard to give a definition to, I think.
It's one of the most pivotal times in history. I have never sensed a more momentous occasion than now. The world is reeling with uncertainty. It's almost like it's in the air.
Everything's truth is coming from our mind, I believe.
I might interpret truth through the lens of science. I might interpret truth through the lens of some...
I always feel like I have to point out, because of the stained glass in the background, that when you listen to this woman, with the stained glass, you think she's like in a church, which she is, but I believe it to be what's called a Unitarian church. And if you're familiar with that, the Unitarian church, they call themselves a church, so they're kind of like a, hey, we accept all ways to God. So she's like a theologian, but not Christian.
Ideology. Perhaps communism.
We've got a crisis of truth, not only in the universities, but in the culture. For us, truth is relative and subjective and pragmatic and so on. At its worst, truth is dead.
What is truth? Different people with different value systems may have different what they see as truth.
I truly believe there's a difference between fact and truth.
There is a real sense of fear and uncertainty, and nobody seems to have the answers.
Truth is hard to define because everybody sees things in different ways.
I have a bit of the truth, you have a bit of the truth.
Truth is everything's coming from our inside. That's truth, never coming from the outside.
There are many ways to interpret, understand, and experience truth. It's relative.
The need is great. We are seeing more and more the body of Christ conforming to the world. Our divorce rates are not that much different. Sexual addiction, our outlook on life is not that much different from the rest of the world.
And in our churches, this whole move towards doctrinal vacuum, where the person knows less and less of why they believe what they believe, has been a dangerous amputation that has taken place.
The relativism, like a rot, has eaten deeply even in Christian circles. Christians who've given up truth in the name of all the postmodern skepticism are absolute fools, and they're destroying the very foundations in which we're sitting. Truth is fundamentally about who God is. Those who take God seriously take truth seriously.
One of the things we're going to do is to confront students with whether or not they really live as if the truth claims that God has given to us are really real.
It is a long time coming, a project such as the Truth Project. The question of truth and training minds in how to approach truth is of importance that cannot be gainsaid.
We're hoping to build that framework and that belief, that confidence that God has indeed spoken to us, and He is who He says He is, and He can be trusted. When an individual begins to understand that we're not left to just flounder around on our own, but there are truth claims of God that deal with every area of life, and that they can be trusted, whether we're talking about sociology, we're talking about anthropology, we're talking about science or history, law, politics, economics, it does not matter. And trust that God has given to us the framework of truth from which we can stand upon and live. God is saying, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I am convinced that that is exactly what truly transforms people. And you will find it to be one of the most glorious moments in your life. There isn't anything that is more thrilling to me than to see an individual when all of a sudden their eyes light up and they begin to understand who God really is and what it means to really believe that He not only really is, but what He has said and the promises of God are really true. It's to see them so hunger for who God is that they themselves, as 1 Corinthians says, become transformed, metamorphed into the very image of Christ. And that means that when God weeps, we weep. That which He calls evil, we see as evil. What He sees as glorious and good, we see as glorious and good.
That's the point. When you look at the world and the condition of people, if people are acting and the world is going in a direction that would make God weep, does it make you weep, or do you care? Did we talk about apathy in here? What that word meant? Because that's kind of rampant too. Apathy means if you're apathetic,
Don't care.
that you don't care. So one of the sections in the first chapter that I don't think it's in this reading, but why should you care? One of the introductory questions that you're asked when you start the class and in the textbook is, why should you care? And a lot of people, even Christians, like, why should we care? And there's a lot of apathy, and that's how we've allowed things to happen. But if there's things that you know would make God sad, do they make you sad? If there's things that are happening that would be glorious and bring God glory, are you happy about those things? That's the way we want to see the world. That's the point to this. To see the world the way God sees the world. And then ultimately you see yourself the way God sees you. And as you get stronger in your relationship and become more and more Christ-like, that we're all striving to be, I hope. And we're so overwhelmed with joy that when God sees me, He sees Christ. Well, we hope that that's true for everybody. Any questions? So that's called the Truth Project, and it's actually a long series of, I don't know how many videos. We really focus on this first one that is called What is Truth, even though they talk about history and ethics, a lot of the stuff that we talk about in the book. But the foundation of everything we do should be truth. If I say something or I share a thought, idea, or opinion, and someone can show me, hey, that's counter to biblical truth, I hope someone tells me that. And I hope anything I'm saying and ideas that I'm putting forth in the classroom or anywhere else, if they're not biblical, I really do, really, truly hope someone would tell me that that's not biblical, because I don't want to do anything other than what the truth is. And there is, like they were saying, what is truth? All those different people. What were their answers? It's relative. It's up to each person what truth is. The one guy says, truth can never be attained outside. It's only on the inside. In other words, it's only according to you, right? And in the background of him, did anybody notice, were you paying attention, were you observant? That guy that said it's only, what was in the background? Like Eastern, Buddha, those kind of, and that's really, that's deep into the Eastern religious philosophy, where we get that one worldview called New Spirituality, that it's all in you, but not really in you, because it's only in you because you're part of the one universe, the Brahma, the spirit world is all one, and you're part of it. So then that truth is in you. That's kind of like where their type of thinking comes from. So, any questions? Wasn't that nice? How many notes today, huh? Did you go last night? You part of the, you go?
Yeah.
You went?
Yeah.
How was it? How many were there?
Not many people showed up because advertising was weird. Like the ladies that we had to do the advertising, like, just didn't.
Wednesdays are bad. I mean, every day's bad for me because I'm officiating or something. And then Wednesdays I carve off to see Theo. I know what your grandma was saying, but you gotta make time.
Yep, mealtime management.
You know what?